Hey everyone, West Coast Muscle Saws. I want to talk to you today a couple different things. One of them, how to economically do some restoration on your vintage saw bars. This is a roller bar, roller nose we call it. It's got the roller in it. Came off one of my vintage saws over there. Came off one of the old partner chainsaws. And of course you want to save these if you can. Now if this had the stickers and the badge stuff on it, of course we'd be very careful cleaning them up. This here has been used, so we want to just give it a good cleaning and make it look sharp on that restoration of your chainsaw. Next thing we'll do in the video, we're going to talk about this will probably step on some toes out there. Sorry about that, guys. The myths and misunderstandings and misconceptions about saw chain, how to sharpen it. You've seen them, I've seen them, probably 1,000 different ways to do it. Oregon saw chain, I've been up there, know the guys real well. I actually had one of my friends work there for 10 years, and she filled me in on how the actual chain was made. I've watched it being made. It's very interesting. We'll go over that a little bit and how to properly maintain it without having to go into great details of how complicated they make it sound. And we'll do that here in a little bit. But first, I want to show you something here. They sent me one of these little buffer polishers, little sander, Saker. And it's very economical. You can go get online, just punch in, do a search for that. It'll pop up. It's got its own little battery pack on it. It comes with all kinds of buffers and everything, and we're going to we'll show you what we do there to make a bar look good. Comes with a little apron. I'm going to use my McCullough, vintage McCullough apron. I love it. Thanks for sending that to me, by the way, fella. Okay. A couple of things, safety things first to go over. Mask of some sort, dust mask. We're going to use that. Glasses, safety glasses. Never do this at home. This is just for entertainment, the routine, disclaimers. Pair of gloves. And of course the chain. This is the original chain on that vintage saw. And I've seen a lot of guys restore their saws and they've got a beautiful looking saw. It wouldn't cut through a log to save their life. And basically, I'm going to go over a little bit of tuning the chains, how you can tune your chain and it'll cut just as good as it did back 50 years ago. Of course, today's chains are really high performance and really cut a lot better than the old ones, but you'd be surprised how good you can make your vintage chain cut. Okay, let's get started on this. And I've got the door open here, some ventilation. You always want ventilation. You want to have your mask on and don't be inhaling anything. And I got a sanding disc on it. See that right there. And we'll run that over first, and then we'll buff it a little bit. And we're taking off the surface rust is what we're doing. And we'll hit a little more on it. Now a slick little tool. Then we're going to wipe it off a little bit with a towel and get some polishing compound. You may have to go over it 3 or 4 times with this, and there's different grits. You can use a different grit on this too. send you about 6 of these different polish pads, and you can leave the sander on or take it off. It's Velcro, it comes off real easy. And of course, at the shop where I worked, I had a big commercial, had commercial grinders and disc sanders and all that. But this is for if you don't want to invest, several $1,000s. You can, I don't know what these go for. You'd have to look and see. I bet you could get one of these and start doing this, probably $100 or less. I'm assuming. I don't quote me on that. But I'm just saying it's somewhere in there. But you just a dab some compound on there. There's different grades of this. You can get all kinds of them. Wipe the residue off. And you can see, I'm not done yet, of course. You can see the difference here. Hold that in the light there. This is one of the tricks, and a lot of guys didn't understand this. This is one of the tricks that the timber cutters would do on their chainsaws. They would polish the bars, and you can tell why. You can see how that doesn't slide on it. And then that just, look how that just stops there, and then it just falls right off. When you're cutting a bit pitchy wood or big Doug fir, stuff like that, you want this slick as it can be. And that's what we did a lot. That's with the bar shops and the buffers and the side winders and stuff like that. You could just polish this, almost mirror finish. And that's what the race guys, a lot of the guys won't tell you how they race their chainsaws when they're cutting at the events, the steel events and stuff like that. That thing is so polished, it's just like glass. And of course, we're talking milliseconds to win the race. They're so close, so competitive. It's just like racing cars at NASCAR. You win the race sometimes by just a few seconds or less. Same when you're cutting, if you're into the professional cutting. I actually had a timber cutter. It was the top cutter for one of the outfits around here, and it was a big outfit. He was our #1 cutter of probably 50 or 75 cutters at the time. And he ran a Homelight 925, which, that's like showing up at NASCAR with a Volkswagen or something. I mean, you just didn't do it. But he told me, he said, the motor runs good. He said, where I make my money is the chain and the bar. And he had probably 2 or 3 chains he carried with him in his pockets, and they were razor sharp. I sharpened them for him on my Sylvia SDM4, took the rakers down. Those things were, you couldn't touch them. They would just slice you like a razor. And he had that bar polished, and he could cut and buck and just blew everybody away. And everybody wondered how he did it. Well, that's how it was done. And so we'll go over some stuff on the chain now and the bar rails. Of course, the same with the bar rails. You can polish those up, get them where they're slick, do all kinds of things. Now, if you're going to use a grinder on these, then you really need, you could build one. I had the bar shop. You need something that is perfectly square with the grinding wheel, vertical, and then your horizontal table, perfectly square. And you would put that bar up against that, and you could square the rails up because they get uneven. And of course, with the buffer, you take the lips off and polish the bar. And then you take a fine file. I had a bracket that I built where I could set the file perfectly square on this and just lightly go over it and leave a mirror finish. Finishing with some sandpaper. A lot of work, yeah. Fast cutting, yeah. That's the ticket. Let's talk about some saw chain now. Let me get my demo tooth out here. We'll talk about that. Anyway, on this here, they're out there. Very inexpensive. If you're wanting to get into starting to polish the bars and take care of the bar lips and clean everything up, very good way to go. Told you about my friend. She worked for Oregon Saw Chain for 10 years in the 70s. Saw chain was pretty good in the 70s. It was awful good. And this tooth, they had a machine. I watched them build a chain. And it's in a room. It wasn't back then because they weren't concerned over your hearing back then. But anyway, nowadays, I was there not too long ago. And it's in a room where you can't hear the machine going on. It sounds like a AK-47 shooting like you can't believe. It's just brrrr, and as it's doing that, it's shaping this tooth. It's a big roll of steel, probably inch, well, very narrow, maybe about an inch wide or less on a roll, and it's sitting there and it just slowly rotates as it's feeding into this machine, as that machine just hammering it out, and it's what it's doing is shaping this and getting a tooth in configuration. It's not that hard of steel. It is a little harder than some, but it's not really hard. Without the chrome, you couldn't cut any wood with it. You could make about a half a cut, it'd be dull. It's just not hard enough. Her job was to take these teeth, hundreds, thousands of them. They would line them up on a rack, called a rack, left side and right side, left tooth, right tooth. Put them in a vat of chrome and let them sit there for 15 minutes probably. Hooked up to electricity, electrode, how they process that to get it to stick to metal. You can research it on there. It's pretty easy if you had all these stuff. Of course, the chrome and everything is highly toxic, and you don't want to do this at home type of thing. It's how they chrome plate car parts and stuff like that. It's a process. Highly toxic stuff comes from that, but Oregon's saw chain is really good about maintaining a good, clean environment up there. It's up in Portland, Oregon, by the way. If you ever can get a chance to go through there, it's pretty cool. Okay, they get that chromed, and they flush it in a cleaning vat, and maybe chrome it again, depending on the thickness. It's very thin. Then you've got the tooth. That's what you got. Not really sharp. They do try to sharpen it at the factory. They put a little bit of an edge. They got a special machine there, and it'll cut, but not like somebody gets their hands on it and fine tunes that chain. I used to take the brand new chisel chains, and I had an SDM4. And here's where guys get into trouble on grinding chains. Hand filing, you don't get the chain tooth hot enough to damage the chrome. It's a very thin coating of chrome. That's what keeps that edge hard and able to cut wood for extended times. You can get a Oregon grinder, different grinders. There's some grinders out there, Harbor Freight, all of them. There's all kinds of them. You want one though that's got all the adjustments so you can put the correct pitch for the different teeth. And Oregon produces a really nice guide on where to set your machine, and you really need one of those because they are a little different, and that's where you get your different angles. A guy a timber cutter once told me, and they told me at Oregon the same thing, ask 10 different guys how to grind a chain, you'll get 10 different answers. It's going to be, and everybody's got the best way to go. I sharpen chains, shipped them all over the world. Had a good, everybody seemed to like them, so I'm thinking pretty good, so that's what I'm going to go over with you right now. The chrome is very thin, and so you take your grinder, and if you're not careful and the wheel's not clean, if the wheel's got particles on it, it heats it up, you will actually put a little blue coating, it'll turn blue on you. And what you've done is heated that chrome up and damaged that chrome. The only way to get that out, and of course some guys, they don't know that they've damaged it, and they'll go out and cut with it, and it cuts fairly good for a little while. The chrome starts peeling, and then you got a problem. So you lightly touch. When you're grinding a tooth, you don't just sit there and just grind it. You take that wheel, and if this was a grinding wheel, and you'd bring the machine into it, and you'd bump, 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 bump. It has settings on the machine, so you can go so far, so deep. What you really want to do, though, is look on top of the tooth before you start grinding, and you can see the damage. it'll be discoloration, a little peeled over, damaged chrome. You got to get it out of there. If you don't get it out of there, it might cut a little bit for a little while, then it won't. Angles. Everybody's got their own angle on where you want that file or where you want that wheel grinding stone to set in there. Oregon makes a really good guide. You can get it from Oregon Saw Chain, giving you specs on it. Steel does also. They're very, of course, they're all got their own. They're off a little bit just because it's steel or just because it's Oregon. They're going to be just a little different. How to do that, and truthfully, if you take a round file, we're not okay. We got a chisel tooth, and we want to use a 7/32 round, 72 CJ, 75 CJ. They don't give you the specs on that, but you can use a 7/32, bring it back 35 degrees, tilt it down, not straight across, and file. And if you can shape it to get to look just like that, that's going to cut. But now what's going to happen is every time you file this, you can see how it slopes down, and that is theoretically bringing this up. It's not doing it physically, but you can see with the slope, this is not where it should be setting with this, your raker. So you need to file that raker and use a gauge and file the raker to get it in compliance. Well, I've seen guys, I've had cutters, I want that raker gone. Yeah. Good luck on cutting with that. You're going to spend most of your time jerking and pulling and damaging teeth and ruining everything. But that's their version of it. You know, everybody's got their own version. You're going to hear 1,000 different ones after this video. Anyway, get it in compliance. You can tell if you've got that raker down too far by after making a few cuts, you're going to see some lips on here. That's from that thing digging in so much, it's pushing back, and you are going to see, actually, I've actually seen it cut through these rivets, actually wear so hard. So you can actually look at your teeth and tell what's going on by looking at where it rides in the bar groove, where it rides on top of the bar groove, if you're doing a good job. And this actually has some guides, you can tell, some of the Oregon Saw Chain, when you're getting in a dangerous position where you're going to start popping rivets. I've had guys brand new chains after they've taken the raker down way too much. It'll just, rivets will start popping right here. But if you're racing a chainsaw and you're wanting to win that trophy, do some practicing, and you can theoretically take that raker down. You're going to have to play with it, but use a gauge so you get them all the same. It's very critical to get them all the same so it feeds smoothly. And you can improve the cutting abilities. It's not great for firewood cutting or fallen trees, but it might get you through that race cut a little quicker. Anyway, like I say, and this one has the guide right here. A lot of the saw chains gives you the correct angle to set your file. You just, if you're freehand style, and you can do a good job freestyling. Oregon Saw Chain, when I was at the factory there, we did a test, and there'll be a lot of flack over this little statement too. We had teeth that were this long. We filed them down to where they were this long, and everywhere in between. That'd make a really poor cut, wouldn't it? Well, it worked perfect once we put the gauge. Set the gauge on here, got the correct raker gauge distance. That tooth didn't realize that it was that much shorter than his buddies, and it cut beautiful. Goes against the grain of thinking, but you know, proof is in the pudding there for me. And so, like I say, if you freehand, you know, you can tell by looking at how much you're taking off here. If the chrome's damaged, you do need to take it off. This tooth might have more damage than its brothers up above. File it back, put the gauge on there, get this in compliance. It's going to cut good. It'll be fine. Anyway, a lot of myths out there. Guys are going to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, but if you do a little research about the chainsaw guy on how fast his chains cut, you know, it's just common sense stuff. You know, like I said, everybody's got their own idea, and I'm not saying they're wrong. You know, everybody, you know, they can cut with their chains. But anyway, that's going to wind her up. Like I say, don't forget, reasonable pricey way to go. I use this today. I actually had the big sidewinders and polishers and everything, the bar shops, did bar repair for years, but if you're just wanting to do it at home, Saker, good outfit. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Have a great day. Good holiday if I don't see you. Christmas is coming up, and we'll catch you guys later.